aspirin came on the market in 1897 as a painkiller. And in the 21st century, low-dose aspirin became an indication for cardiovascular prevention treatment. This was studied very thoroughly in large groups of patients. And in these studies, it was seen that patients who got cancer during the study and used aspirin lived longer than patients who didn't get aspirin in these studies. When this suspicion rose, many studies were done retrospectively on the effect of aspirin on cancer, but they were only done in mainly colorectal cancer. There's also very little known about the etiology of the effect of aspirin on cancer. And that's why we had the research question, what is the effect of aspirin on all different gastrointestinal cancer types? And maybe this can give us more information about the etiology of the effect of aspirin on cancer. How we did this? We had data on survival of all patients with a gastrointestinal tumor diagnosed between 1998 and 2011. And we linked that to the pharmacy prescription data of these patients. And in total, this were 13,715 patients, of which 8.3% used aspirin only after diagnosis of cancer. The patients who already used aspirin at diagnosis were excluded from this analysis. And here you can see the results. I have a mouse. You can see that after 5 years, 75% of the patients using aspirin were alive versus 42% of patients with a gastrointestinal malignancy not using aspirin. But what kind of patients are we talking about? Here you see that most of my study populations were patients with colon or rectal cancer, but also a significant part of this population was stomach and esophageal cancer. But what is the effect on every distinct organ in this population? Here you see the result per organ type, and this line shows no benefit. This line shows no benefit. Right of the line, no benefit, and on the left there is benefit. And for the total gastrointestinal tract, you see that aspirin use after diagnosis shows a survival benefit of the aspirin users twice as high compared to patients not using aspirin after diagnosis. And when you see this for all the different organ types, you see that this effect is for every single organ type except for pancreatic cancer. But in this study, there's no information on the side effects of aspirin when it's a treatment for cancer. And that way, randomized controlled trials have to be done to confirm this effect of aspirin on cancer. At this moment, many randomized controlled trials are being done throughout the world, as you can see here. In the Netherlands, we also have a randomized controlled trial. It's called the Aspirin trial, and we randomize patients between aspirin and placebo in patients with colon cancer after diagnosis. We follow them for 5 years, and then we determine overall survival between the groups. Aspirin is a very cheap drug where clinicians have wide experience with prescribing, and it's mostly well tolerated in large groups of patients. It has relatively little side effects, but when you administer it to large groups of patients, this has to be studied very well. As you can see from my study, multiple cancer types are responsive, and this can also give new direction towards new studies. In conclusion, patients using aspirin after diagnosis of a gastrointestinal malignancy have a chance of survival twice as high compared to patients not using aspirin. If aspirin can become regular treatment for cancer, this can have a large impact on cancer survival and global health throughout the world. Thank you for your attention.